found a way, but I think I had to work harder. So I don't know. I would say that I had to work more hours than, say, a really good attorney or a really good doctor. They would have to put in less hours than I would in order to make similar money as to what I made when I was working. But when you work in sales, you don't just get like an hourly rate, you get paid off your performance. We had a saying that said, you eat what you kill, because basically if you don't sell, you don't eat because you don't have any money. And in ancient times, basically if you weren't able to kill an animal, you could potentially starve to death. If you had you not stored up food for the winter, you would have no choice but to eat something that you killed to survive. Today, of course, we don't have to eat animals to survive, but back then, in winter, you really didn't have many options. So, but to get back to his story, it just really, I can tell by what he wrote me that it really impacted his life by what happened, and he was scared. So it really was the first time, not that I've never felt appreciated, but I felt a really strong sense of purpose in that I always felt like if people, like my story, what I've been through, I really think that I've always felt like if I could get it out there, somebody somewhere might have similar thoughts and they might not feel alone, like some of my beliefs that are different than a lot of people's. Because in my mind I thought I cannot be the only person thinking this. But in this situation, it's like I can't be the only person going through this, to where I see like the madness of life, and I see like, I was thinking about this earlier, it's like on one side of the scale you have like someone with jets and Ferraris and houses all over the world and just don't have to work, they just have an amazing life. And on this end of the scale, you've got a homeless person living on the streets, addicted to drugs. That's about like the bottom of life in America, but they typically live somewhere they can survive at night. And so that's why California is so popular, because like they don't have snow on the ground in most of California, especially Southern California. It's like 70 degrees all year round. You can be homeless there and live day or night, and it rarely rains too. So, but we don't just have those two extremes. That's one end of the extreme, and this is the other end of the extreme. But we have everything in between. So it's like, it's sometimes I feel like, we only see the two images because that's all that we celebrate. We only celebrate the rich and famous. And we always hear about the bad of the homeless problem and drugs and what's going on. So they're like always front and center because it's a problem. Everybody sees it every day, and it's like, so I felt like in my mind, it's like, I know that most people don't live here, and most people don't live here. Most people live in here somewhere, and we don't get heard. It's like our voices are not spread. And it's really, honestly, like, I think about this life over here with the jets and the Ferraris, and I'll admit, like, when I was probably 16, 17 maybe, I felt like, that might be what I wanted. I was so happy to be getting out of the constrained home of my parents and their belief system that I felt like my initial freedom was like, I felt like I could do anything, and like, I don't think I was to the point that I was arrogant about it, but like, I know in my mind I something on this Bugatti, and it was like $25,000 per tire. And you know, when you're flying, it's like one flight is like $30,000. If you're going to say, if I was going to fly from here and I wanted to go to California, it would be like $30,000 to charter a private jet, and that would be not owning the jet. That would just be like flying it. And then if I have all these houses, it's like somebody's got to be taking care of them, right? The yard's got to get mowed, and like stuff's breaking and it's got to get fixed. So who's doing that? A company. I'm paying somebody to do all that. So it's ultimately, like, for me, it's like I just don't want the additional responsibility. I don't want those things. I don't hate people that have them. I'm glad that everybody can aspire to whatever life they want, but there is nothing wrong with not aspiring to have that. And truly, the weight of having all that, having to know that you're responsible for that, and you have to maintain that status, there's nowhere to go but down. And you know, I don't, I think the problem, like I see, is that that's like all the motivational speakers, and that's what they're trying to convince us is the best life. But I don't believe it's the best life. I really don't. I think a little simpler life, you know, obviously I want electricity, I want a nice shelter, which is a home, I want dependable transportation, I want communications like the internet and cell phones, but I also want peace and nature and peace of mind where I don't really have to worry about, you know, oh my God, I've got to make $800,000 this month to pay for all my homes and everything, you know, or I just, you know, and I think too that you're always flying or you're always traveling and you're never in one spot, and you've got employees all around you and maids and cooks, and you know, there's the opportunities for people to do something malicious, you know. Using Andrew Tate as an example, it was because of all those women and it was bound to be, you know, if you just are with one or two women, probably nothing's going to happen. 5 or 6, maybe nothing. But if you're now 50 and 60 and 100 and 200 women, the probability factor that one or two of those are going to try to scam you, or, you know, you forget the fact if he really did it. Let's pretend for a second that he is truly innocent. So that means he's getting scammed. And so it's the probability thing. And that's, again, where I feel like staying alive is, like, important. Like, look at Kobe Bryant. He died in that helicopter crash. It's like living that. There is danger. Now, I grant you, flying is statistically safer than riding in a car. But, you know, whatever you're doing a lot of, if you're driving a lot, then you're taking big chances too. But if you don't do a whole lot, if you are more at peace with just being with yourself, or if you live with animals, it's really a good life. It's a great life, and that's what I think I've, you know, as I let out my personal feelings, there's a reason why somebody like me, then why wouldn't I just stay private? It's certainly not so I can make, you know, 30 or 50 bucks a month off a YouTube channel, because trust me, I put way more time into this than I think I'll ever get back. But that's it. You know, I helped one person. I know I helped that person, and I've got other comments that were very. I got one on my advice channel. Many people have come out to say that they appreciate it, but it does help. But I don't think I've ever had anybody ever tell me that the exact same thing happened to them, and that's why I think it was. It really. I think I got a little bit emotional just because it took me back to that time, and I remember being afraid. You know, I remember thinking, oh God, I'm now not going to get a degree. I'm not going to finish university. So I've got now to regroup, refocus, and dig deep and say, what am I going to do? And yeah, that's, I just can't tell you how grateful I am that I made it. You know, so many things that could have went wrong. And it is so easy to slip up and miss an opportunity. There's a saying that says, success happens when opportunity and preparation meet. So if you're prepared and here's an opportunity, boom, success can happen. But if you get an opportunity, somebody says, hey, can you do this? But you're not prepared, then it doesn't happen. So you have to always be looking for opportunity. And I think even if you feel unprepared, you have to overcome. It's like fake it till you make it type thing. You really have to push through, because I struggled as well with, I'm trying to think of the name, imposter syndrome. It's called imposter syndrome because as I started to succeed, there were parts of me that felt like I didn't deserve it. Like I was self-conscious. Like I think I did walk around a lot like I didn't deserve it. And I think a lot of it just had to do with my childhood, how I had negativity and was told I would never amount to anything. And then also the fact that I was so poor growing up that when I did finally start having money, that I didn't have to look poor. Like I wasn't obviously poor. Like as a kid, I guarantee my family was obviously poor. We had cars that would barely run and houses that were just horrible. But once I lost that, and I was self-conscious about that in school, but once I lost that and I actually was out on my own and started slowly but surely digging myself out of that hole, it helped. I lost my train of thought there. I was talking about the imposter syndrome, but when I felt that even though I got out and I didn't look poor anymore, I still felt poor. And like I could still see it in the rearview mirror, so I just never felt comfortable with I never felt comfortable with, like I can't hardly explain it. Well, the imposter syndrome explains what it was, but how it felt is, I guess by definition, you feel like you're an imposter. Like, here I am with this money, but I'm not supposed to have it. I guess feeling guilty because you knew so many people that still didn't have it. It's like when I go to my mom's house for Christmas, my mom does not live near as nice as me. And like, I bought my mom a brand new car because she's never had a new car in her life. And she's always bought like junky cars. But my mom is just, she wants to live meek. She's a Christian and she just doesn't want that. She's on another scale from me. Like, I have so much, like, this is kind of how I want to live. I would be happy if I never got anything else the rest of my life, if all of this just stayed the same and I never got a different car or anything like that. I would be just happy and content. But I'm now 50 years old, and so it took a long time to get this. And I think that that's the message that's not being told. And to get back to the original point of the video was the amount of time you want to give is what something truly costs, and how much of your life are you willing to give. And for me, I was willing to give all of it because I knew I was crawling out of such a deep hole that in my mind it was going to take an amazing, aggressive effort to persevere and see it through. And I also think I realized early on just how much it takes to live, and that if you're not working a job that gives you a pension, like a retirement plan, then at the end of the day there's jobs still do that here, the post office and things like that. But very few companies do it. The big companies do, like the pharmaceutical companies and the people with, they'll contribute to your retirement. But the smaller companies do not. None of the companies I've ever worked for had that. So for me, you just, not only did you have to have money to live and make smart financial decisions, but you also had to put some back and have delayed gratification. And though you had money, you had to avoid the temptation of spending more. Getting some. If you've got a car, well, get this one. Don't get that one that you can afford. It's one of the reasons why I had 4Runners when I was, in my 30s and 40s, because I could afford a Land Cruiser, but I didn't want to take that chance. I didn't want to spend the extra because I couldn't justify it, because I knew I would be better served if I could put that money away, that rather than spending another, $40,000 on something that I really didn't need. But those are things that I think are really important. I think less is more today. I think being a minimalist and just having what you need and not a lot of extra stuff is important. It helps you stay organized, and it helps you, it costs less money rather than buying a ton of stuff. So like if you buy something, just buy something nice. Like I could have got a lot of cheaper computer, but I got a Mac and I haven't had to buy one like that. My desktop Mac is like a 2017 maybe, and it's just, it works perfect all the time. But if I got a lesser one, I may have went through 2 or 3, or but if you just don't have, if what you have is, you're very specific with your purchases, and try to avoid a lot of clutter. I think it's important in life too, because you just feel better when things are, it puts you in a different frame of mind. And that's why, like, cleaning your room is important. Making your bed is important. Like, whenever you guys see my dogs in that, even though my dogs are laying on my bed all day, it's made. Like, one thing it does for me is it keeps them off my sheets when they get in the hair all over my sheets. So that top blanket has hair all over it, but when I get under the sheets, it's clean. So anyway, I hope you liked tonight's video. I want to leave you with one last bit of a story, actually, that happened to me last weekend. About maybe a month or so ago, I think I've told you guys that one of my best friends is an 80-year-old attorney, and he had asked me if I would go to this museum thing that was coming to town. It was a Claude Monet exhibit called Lumi, and it's where they like take his paintings and they like put them on the floor and the ceiling and the walls, and it's like this machinery, this light show that actually puts them, puts it all, it's like you're walking through his paintings. So it was just a high-tech experience. So I told him I would go with him, and that was going to be on Sunday. And so on Saturday, he emailed me and he said, "Hey, are we still on for tomorrow?" Because I had told him I would come to his house and pick him up at 10:30 in the morning, because it started at 11 and he lives close to the museum. So anyway, in that moment when I got his email, I looked at my daily planner to see what was on my daily planner, and I had an open house scheduled for one of the homes that I'm trying to sell, and the open house was from 12 to 4. Well, I realized, oh my God, I've got to cancel one of these things. So I like, in a moment of panic, I didn't email him back to say yes. I called my client and said, "Linda, I've made a huge mistake. I made a commitment to go to this Claude Monet thing at the Museum of Art, and it's at the same time as your open house, and I have to cancel one. So I'm so sorry to tell you. I'm just asking you, how would you feel if I if I changed it to another day, or if you just stayed there, there's probably not going to be any people come through. Just you would be there and show people the house. And what happened is, she said to me, Derek, I've been to that exhibit. It's amazing. You have got to go. So I'm like, oh my God, what are the odds? Because this thing is not like well advertised. It's like art in the area I live in. It's not like very few people are really like into like the art scene. So, like I don't really like when I went through it. Yeah, that like the technology side was more impressive to me than what the actual painting was. I mean, it looks to me like on Monet paintings. Some of them I think like a kid could do them, but I just don't get it, like some people don't get sports. I don't get art, I don't get really sports either. I mean, I understand them, but I just don't get the worship of them. So anyway, I thought that you would find that story interesting, that that it was that connection that made it much easier to do it. But here's the rest of the story. So she told me, I'm not comfortable being here alone with strangers coming in. So I said, okay, how about this? I've got a coworker that would come out there and do it for me. And she said, okay, that would be fine. And so when I hung up with her, I told her I would let her know. And then I hung up with her. And then I called a friend of mine who also sells real estate. And I said, hey, Mo, can you do this open house for me? And he did. Now, this is the important part here. So this was the very first weekend this house was for sale. It's the best weekend to ever have an open house. It's why I scheduled the open house. So in my work planner, of course, all my work stuff is in there. I didn't forget about the open house. I forgot about going to the museum. Why? Because that's my personal life. And it doesn't take as much precedence over my work life. So the way the open house works is I'm selling the house for the woman that owns the house. So I'm the listing agent. Well, whoever finds the buyer for the house is the buyer's agent. So two people get paid. The commission is 6% on the house. I get 3%, and the buyer gets 3%. So not the buyer, but the buyer's agent. So I'm selling the house. When the house sells, I get it's a $500,000 house, so I get $15,000. But the buyer's agent gets $15,000 too. So we both make the same amount of money, even though I have the sign in the yard and I'm actually selling the house. So, but you can get both sides. Like if you are in an open house and somebody walks through the door and says, oh my God, I love this house, I want to buy it, and they don't have an agent, you can represent the buyer and you can represent you're already representing the seller. So now instead of making $15,000, you're making $30,000. Well, that's why I do open houses, because you basically double your money. So I knew it was going to be a good open house because it was the very first weekend and it was out in the country, and not many people have seen it. So I knew I just knew that I had a good feeling it was going to sell. So I knew the chance I was taking by going to the museum with my friend rather than doing the open house. I knew I might very well lose $15,000. And you know what happened? My friend sold the house at the open house. So he made $15,000, and we both will make $15,000 when it actually closes, which will be the end of February. But it was just like something magical that I can do a deal with my friend, but also that for another friend, I actually walked away from that in order to honor my obligation. Now, I don't know what I would have done if I'd have called my client and she said, no, Derek, you signed up for this. I'm paying you good money. You're doing this open house. That's why I hired you. I didn't want a string. I didn't want somebody else. If she would have done that, I probably would have had to call my friend and say, hey, my client is mean and she's making me do this open house, that I made a huge mistake on scheduling when I'd already committed to going with